Harvest reaches the finish line in Nebraska, where it's a mixed bag. Strong yields for some, average for others, and many simply praying for rain. We will hear from folks from the Panhandle to Lincoln and what the numbers are telling us about farm income. Plus, a beef plant with a unique market plans to expand. We'll see what local residents are saying and why Senator Pete Ricketts says we've averted disaster on the farm bill.
These cows have antlers.
These cows have antlers.
Yes.
Yeah. Later, you know, Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen. Now meet the reindeer who call central Nebraska home. It's time to grow. We will play some reindeer games in a bit, but first, harvest wrapping up in Nebraska. Strong yields for some, average for others, and across the state, farm income is ticking up. Plant in dust and the bins will bust. So goes one saying you hear on the farm, but the truth is more nuanced. Harvest has officially reached the end along the Corn Belt, according to the USDA, which reports yields in Nebraska are up. After a year when wildfires and drought devastated many, it's quite a turnaround. And the state ag director says modern genetics and precision technology deserve credit.
You know, our crops are actually a pretty good average yield for corn and soybeans. When you think that this drought is severe as it was in the 1930s, and we're still bringing in most places, an above average crop and yield, that's amazing.
In the Panhandle, Andy Groskopf says they got about 20 inches of rain.
It's one of the wetter summers that we've had, and it was pretty nice, actually. I mean, the only struggle with it was trying to get a pivot around. They wouldn't go around. They were stuck all the time.
It wasn't just the mud, but some severe stuff, too.
We had hail on about every acre that we had. Some was more severe than others, but all in all, in my neighborhood, we've had decent yields.
However, drought intensified in other areas, including central Nebraska.
A lot of guys they're kind of upset. You know, the yield wasn't there. I think it wasn't the first hot spell in August. It was the second one that really got guys. And
overall, total corn production isn't a record, but isn't far off. Plus, economists say farm income is ticking up. However, they're quick to point out the cost of raising a crop is also up. Fertilizer and fuel did come down from the previous year, but remain significant expenses. And several other categories rose, including taxes, labor, and rent. It was the first plant to send American beef to Israel in years. Now a Hastings beef plant is planning to expand. NTV Shady Ferguson has more from Hastings, where the city council discussing a grant for this company.
This plant has 357 employees now, and when they expand, they plan on adding 30 more jobs and process more cattle. And with these jobs, 51% will be filled or made available to low to moderate income individuals. But there are still concerns for the ranges of income due to the lack of affordable housing.
Housing is a concern. It is everywhere, and we've got a great team working on those things as well to just continue to help make Hastings a great place for these companies to grow.
Shannon Landauer, Executive Director of Hastings EDC, says the biggest growth in communities comes from existing industry, and this project is no different.
They're really unique, not just in Nebraska, but in our country in terms of what they do and where they're shipping. And we just couldn't be more excited, again, to be growing and to see this company reaching their goals.
Although others may feel differently. Mike Anderson, neighbor to the plant, showed his concerns.
We have reported air quality issues, and the last time a police officer came out, he said the trucks were parked on private property, the trailers, so there was nothing that they could do about the odor.
Anderson says he's not against the business expanding, but is worried about the air he's breathing in. Joel Freeman, engineer of the plant, reassures everyone this is the first time he's hearing of these issues and shares plans moving forward.
We want to be able to send the cleanest water back to the city as they give it to us.
WR Reserve has been preliminarily approved for a $1 million grant. And when it comes to meat processing, some see the Farm Bill as an opportunity to expand local meat processing capabilities. The Nebraska-based Center for Rural Affairs would like to see dollars to support local meat lockers. Much has been made of COVID-related shutdowns and the impact on livestock producers. Farm Bill negotiations have the potential to positively impact small meat processors with grant programs to support expansion. We're also seeing growth in medium and large-size meatpacking plants like Sustainable Beef under construction in North Platte and the proposed expansion of that Hastings plant. And not only does that Hastings plant plan to expand, they also plan to improve their wastewater treatment. NTV's Shady Ferguson has more on that aspect of the project.
With Western Reserve expanding, the stuff that comes out of it comes to this plant.
Our screen first takes all of the stuff.
Stuff like sticks, clothes, kids' toys. If it goes down the drain, it ends up at the Hastings wastewater plant. But it's not just residential waste that ends up here. Industrial customers like WR Reserve also send waste to the facility.
They do their own wastewater system, and we get what they are unable to treat with their system.
WR Reserve plans to improve its pre-treatment system as part of a planned expansion. Wastewater operators say that benefits the community by putting less stress on the city system.
Not only can it cause issues in the process, but it can cause issues in the piping downstream. It can cause wear on lift stations. It can cause wear on physical piping.
Plant operator Dan Godowski says anything that produces fat and oil has to go through a wastewater system. And if that wastewater goes septic, it will produce a dangerous gas.
It is generally dissolved in water, and as that pH lowers, hydrogen sulfide is then released as a gas. And hydrogen sulfide is a silent killer.
And there are certain amounts of toxic pollutants they must look out for. Dean Thompson, lab tech at the plant, says they get around 3.5 million gallons of water a day.
We reduce maybe up to 99% of things like ammonia, of suspended solids, BOD. That's what we do here. Doing its job right here.
And Thompson says as the community grows and new employers come to town, they'll be ready.
We can handle what comes in. Anything that wants to grow or expand or come in. We're really proud of what we do here, and I think the people of Hastings can be really proud of the water that leaves here.
And when COVID is on the rise, this plant can see activities before someone even knows they're sick. Reporting in Hastings, I'm Shady Ferguson.
And the biosolids, yes, that's what they call the material coming out of that plant. They use that to apply to local fields that grow corn that then is fed to cattle. Definitely the full circle approach going on there. In other news, Congress averts disaster with an extension of the Farm Bill. And while that brings some certainty to farmers and ranchers, Congress still needs to pass this massive 5-year piece of legislation.
Harvest is over where Josh England was happy to see an average crop. Thankful he didn't need crop insurance, but glad he hasn't.
If we didn't have it, the farmers today wouldn't survive, because every year there's something in some part of the region of the United States, something happens.
His wife recently visited Capitol Hill with a group of young farmers, telling Congress to protect subsidies for crop insurance purchased by producers.
We have to protect ourselves from natural disasters as well, and that's our livelihood out there.
Our farmers and ranchers rely on federal programs like crop insurance to make decisions season to season.
Crop insurance is a priority for Senator Pete Ricketts. While Congress has been unable to pass a new farm bill, he says it was important to extend current programs before they expired at year's end.
Would have reverted to Depression-era rules that are out of touch with current needs. That would have been a disaster.
Ricketts would like to expand a Nebraska program nationwide, helping SNAP recipients find work. That could be included in the Farm Bill, along with flood recovery legislation. Some have questioned if a divided Congress will come together, especially during an election year, but Ricketts isn't worried.
I actually don't see the presidential election year being a hurdle for us getting a full five-year Farm Bill getting passed.
Back on the farm, Josh England said he's fine with the Farm Bill extension, if it means Congress doesn't rush.
If you take your time with it and do it the right way, do it the first time, that's the best way to do it.
And on ethanol policy, Senator Pete Ricketts says the Biden administration is dragging its feet when it comes to expanding access to E15, higher blends of ethanol being available year-round. Instead, he says this administration continues to be all in on electric vehicles.
Well, with regard to the farmers that say the Biden administration is dragging their feet on E15, they're exactly right. My big beef with this administration is they have a one-size-fit-all answer, and that's electric vehicles. And as I have taken pains to really highlight, EVs don't work everywhere.
What's better than having Christmas trees and reindeer at your farm?
You know Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen. But do you know the reindeer of central Nebraska? Stay with us.
NTV's Grow promises to bring you all the news and trends surrounding agriculture in Nebraska.
Creating resilient food supply chains. The state has dollars available to help with things like processing and transporting products made with Nebraska crops. And we visited with the Nebraska Department of Agriculture to learn more and how you can learn more.
The RFSI, the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Grant, is working through the USDA into the state of Nebraska to bring great opportunities for the middle of the food chain. What we're looking at is not the farmer, not the retailer, but everything in between. And we're going to have a very fast grant cycle to get some opportunities for people that are wanting to package, ship, process, all of these pieces that we need to get our food to the plate. So I would love to introduce Holly Everett, who is our lead on this project. She has been in charge of RFSI since we found out about it, and so she can give you way more details than I can.
All right, thank you. So the Nebraska Department of Agriculture was awarded $3.3 million from the USDA, and we are sub-awarding $2.5 million of that out to middle of the supply chain businesses in Nebraska. That can be producers, for-profit businesses, nonprofit, tribal organizations, institutions such as schools and hospitals, but all doing those middle of the supply chain activities. So that can be storage, aggregation, distribution, processing are going to be some big projects. So those are all projects we're hoping to see come across in grant applications. And that cycle opens December 1st and closes January 31st.
So that's a pretty quick turnaround, but there's an event coming up if you want to know more and get in depth and have all your questions answered. That would be a great opportunity.
Yes, so on December 6th, we will be in Kearney at the Archway Museum. We do have an online registration. There's no fee involved, but we do want you to register so that we can plan accordingly. And we're bringing in producers. We're going to have some panel discussions, lots of opportunities for learning about funding, even beyond the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Program.
And Hillary, just kind of a big picture question, but I think the last few years have shown us with supply chain issues and COVID and all of this, to have some more resiliency, and if we have more local processing and all along that supply chain, do you think are there advantages for Nebraska?
Absolutely. The advantages for Nebraska are just adding to that value-added ag space. So how else can we best utilize the food we grow? And so this provides that resiliency. You mentioned our supply chain issues with the COVID-19 pandemic, and as we build our supply chain and we are able to take that local food and process it here, we're able to actually serve our state even better. There should be a lot of opportunities for farmers and ranchers to be able to take products they're making and further value add to those. And then also for those retailers, those restaurants, those opportunities to get more Nebraska food sold to their customers.
Again, that is for food crops. Meat and poultry are covered under other programs. That event coming up in a couple of days. And our Grow Weather Outlook is next.
We're gearing up for this week's Sports Extra. This Friday on NTV News at 10. Sports Extra, our team covering your team.
Well, the latest drought monitor that was released this past week on Thursday morning. Still got pretty dry conditions across much of the Central Plains and the Midwest for that matter, although a good swath of Nebraska and parts of Kansas in the no drought category. Good to see that. No drought in the state of Kansas stands at roughly 10.25%. They're abnormally dry, roughly 89.75% all the categories in Kansas are relatively similar compared to last week's drought monitor report. Moderate drought still stands at roughly 68.5%. Severe drought still stands at 42.5%. Extreme drought remains the same, 7.63% of the state still in extreme drought, and exceptional drought still none of that exists, which is always a good thing to see that. Moving up north to Nebraska now, no drought now stands at roughly 59.5%. Much of the panhandle as well as northern and southwestern areas in that category. About a 1% improvement from last week, so good to see that too. Abnormally dry still stands at roughly 40.5%, about a 1% improvement from last week too. Otherwise, the rest of these categories are relatively similar compared to last week's report. 27% of the state still at moderate drought. Severe drought still stands at roughly 20.5%, much of that concentrated across parts of east central Nebraska. Extreme drought still stands at 11%, and exceptional drought is still at 3.71% across parts of east central Nebraska. So could still use a lot of rain in some of those areas. Get a look at the latest temperature outlook that we have here for December, looking at relatively above average temperatures for really all of Kansas, all of Nebraska as well, and theoretically most of the country. So looking at pretty above average temperatures for the next month. Precipitation totals now, much of Nebraska and much of Kansas as well, anticipating pretty average precipitation totals with the exception of maybe extreme southeast Nebraska, parts of central and eastern Kansas as well, expecting relatively above average precipitation totals for the next month. So good to see that as well. Looking at the next 3 months, this has not changed compared to last week. Still some slightly above average temperatures expected for parts of northern and eastern Nebraska as well as northeastern Kansas. Otherwise, average or near normal. That's what that shading is there. Temperatures are expected for the next 3 months. So looking at precipitation totals too, looking at slightly above average precipitation totals for really most of Nebraska, most of Kansas, with the exclusions of northeastern Kansas and parts of northern and eastern Nebraska as well. Looking at your Grow Almanac for the week ahead, normally we see a high right around 42. You divide that number in half, that gets our normal low, about 21. The week ahead average high, looking at a high around 57, so really above average per se. Looking at an average low around 29, which is also a little bit above the average mark here. Looking at the Grow week ahead, you'll understand why we have such above average temperatures expected. And in fact, starting the week off on the warmer side of things, a high in the 50s, maybe a little cooler on Tuesday, but you look at Wednesday and Thursday here, it's feeling more like fall than it is maybe early winter per se. It's not winter yet, but certainly abnormal for the month of December. Might see a system come through towards the end of the week, not necessarily anticipating any precipitation, at least right now. Could change, but those temperatures probably going to be a little cooler. Your Grow proverb for the week: as the wind is in the month of November, so it will be in the month of December. And of course, we saw a lot of above average temperatures for November. Those winds out of the south, and so far that month of December here, at least the first week, that holds true so far. We'll see what the end of the month brings. Well, that is a look at your Grow weather report. Stay tuned next week when once again it'll be time to grow.
Corn's his last name and his first priority, but he's definitely up for some reindeer games. We'll visit a unique farm coming up next.
The Farm Family of the Month is sponsored by the Nebraska Soybean Board, feeding, fueling, and innovating for the future.
No need to visit the North Pole with a reindeer farm right here in central Nebraska. In the heart of corn and cattle country, this farmer adds magic to the season with a unique herd.
These cows have antlers.
These cows have antlers.
Yes.
Yeah, checking his cows and bulls, the ones that have neighbors talking.
Just curious, I said, what's that over there? And that ended up being reindeer.
Don't call them does and bucks, and don't expect them to eat milk and cookies or candy canes.
Our reindeer, actually, their favorite treat are raisins.
Brian and his wife Terica have started Blue Star Farm with plans to turn it into a winter wonderland.
What's better than having Christmas trees and reindeer at your farm?
The trees will have to wait a few years, but the reindeer are antler-taining families across Nebraska, and they've already booked events for next year.
Create that lasting memory with your family during that holiday season.
Making memories is what the corn family does, an appropriate name for the manager of a seed corn plant who's used to the corny jokes.
Pretty much heard them all.
The chevrons that form the Christmas tree logo speak to his military service, including a couple of tours in Iraq. The values of community service continue in a unique way as they grow their herd.
Our two oldest reindeer, Dolly and Dash, we did try to breed them this season, so hopefully we have our very first baby come spring.
The Christmas trees suffered a setback, and it's not easy to find a reindeer optometrist when one suffered an eye injury. And they've learned Santa's sleigh likely has lots of girl power.
The male reindeer will typically shed their antlers in that November-December time frame. So most likely Santa's reindeer were actually all female.
Brian tells me long term, the vision is you'll be able to come pick your tree, cut it down, maybe enjoy some hot cocoa, and visit the reindeer. Can't wait to visit that in years to come. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time as we see how agriculture makes Nebraska grow.
NTV's Grow is brought to you by Aurora Cooperative. Tougher together, Aurora and you.